welcome back everyone, it's Maximus, hope you're having a wonderful day, and again we're going back to the world of fighter jets, and it was about time we started talking about some beautiful Russian fighter jets again, and today is one of the most beautiful out there, the Su-27/35 Sukhoi family of fighter jets. They are just fantastic, a pure staple of Russian aviation. Of course, I did recently do a video on the MiG-29 versus F-18. A lot of people highly upset by that video, and I can kind of understand why. But really, I like to just, you know, now and then throw a little bit different content out there in terms of comparison and stuff. I don't normally do comparisons, but today is just going to be a standalone review, opinions, history on this aircraft, and we'll go through the standard format that I always do. Guys, as always, if you do want to support my channel, please feel free to go check out my Patreon account. I'd really appreciate it. So let's just get straight into it. The introduction in the mid-1970s of the United States Air Force F-15 Eagle and F-16 Fighting Falcon put the Eastern Bloc fighter pilots at a distinctive disadvantage. The deployment of the Su-27 Flanker and MiG-29 Fulcrum in the mid-1980s leveled that playing field. Designed as a high-performance fighter with a fly-by-wire control system and the ability to carry up to 10 air-to-air missiles, the highly maneuverable Su-27 is one of the most imposing fighters ever built by the Russian aviation industry. The MiG-29 is superficially very similar in its layout to the larger Su-27, and unlike the counterpart American fighters, which are easily distinguished, a close attention to design details is needed to distinguish between the two Russian fighters. The most striking difference is the Su-27's signature centerline fuselage stinger, which protrudes well after the engine exhaust and is entirely absent on the MiG-29, though this feature may not be apparent from all angles. The vertical stabilizers on the MiG-29 are canted outward, while those on the Su-27 are vertical. Also, the air intakes on the MiG-29 are canted inward, while the air intakes on the Su-27 are vertical. The MiG-29 fuselage sits entirely above the air intakes, engine pods and exhaust beneath the wings, whereas on the Su-27 there is a distinct droop of the forward fuselage below the upper edges of the air intakes of the fighter jet. Basically guys, it's a very similar jet to the MiG-29, but also nothing like it. The first Flanker A prototypes flew on 20th of May 1977. By the early 1980s, Sukhoi's T-10-1 prototype was the subject of much scrutiny by Western intelligence agencies who dubbed it the Flanker A. As the prototype evolved into the Su-27 or Flanker B production model, word of its potential as a fighter spread very quickly. Flanker B Su-27S, which is the original version to enter service, entered in 1984. The initial production seater was referred to as the Su-27S, allowing the designation Su-27 to refer to any or all variants of the family of aircraft in the Western world. However, it should be remembered that the designation Su-27 is perfectly valid for the Su-27S and probably in wider usage. There were 3 separate factories that produced this aircraft. All of these factories' names that I'm not going to try and say to you, because if I do, a Russian is going to fly over here and hit me with the ladle from his borscht because I cannot say the words correctly, and I won't brutalize the Russian language as I normally do. However, during the Cold War there was one that was responsible for the twin-seat versions and 2 other factories for the single-seat versions. After the end of the Cold War, when the orders were scarce and competition keen, both factories actually developed their own aircraft designs in both configurations. The Su-27 airframe was manufactured using the integral configuration, with the wing and fuselage forming a single aerodynamically lifted frame. Its longitudinal sections in the form of the wing airfoil ensures extremely high aerodynamic efficiency. And let's be honest here guys, we know of the capabilities of this fighter jet and how maneuverable and flexible it is in the air. To increase the aircraft's maneuverability even further, it was designed to be unstable in the air, with an artificial stability system providing the remote control system controls. The fighter is fitted with an analog quad-redundant fly-by-wire system. The wings are mid-mounted and semi-delta with square tips. The wing has a drooping leading edge and flaperons. The leading edge root extension, or LERX, extends downward and forward of the wing roots. The vertical tail is twin-finned with rudders, and the horizontal tail is a differential tailpipe which consists of 2 all-moving outer wings. The tail fins are swept back, tapered with square tips and mounted on the outboard of the engines. The flats are mid-mounted, swept back and tapered. The aircraft construction is made of aluminium, or aluminum, alloys with the use of titanium. The fuel system consists of 5 tanks located under the fuselage, in the centre and outer wings. There are 2 turbojet engines in the fuselage, which we'll talk about later. They are square, diagonally cut intakes mounted under the wings alongside the fuselage, and the nose is pointed at a bubble canopy. The crew cockpit is fitted with the K-36DM Series 2 ejection seats. The program to develop the Su-27 as a new generation plane was the USSR's major national defense program in the 70s and the 80s. Its implementation was financed on a large scale, which had the most favourable effect on the development of many different establishments in the national aircraft industry and related areas still to this day. This made it possible to retrofit as many production facilities and introduce a great number of new technologies to make Russia's key fighter jet. The Su-27 program set up a large network of subcontractors across Russia. Large-scale introduction of leading-edge technologies was the rule for all parts of the plane's systems. Russia wanted to make sure that if they were going to build these fighter jets, they were procuring some of the best components around. The plane's power plants comprise of two AL-31F turbofans developed by the design bureau of AM Lukoil. In terms of specifications and performance, these are new generation engines with superior thrust, weight and fuel consumption characteristics, achieved through a dynamic improvement in compressed gas dynamic behaviour and operating temperatures before the turbine. Basically, a lot more efficient engine with cooler air getting to the turbines. It was possible to achieve such characteristics by harnessing promising new materials and features, which allowed technologies like titanium alloys, heat-resistant steels, single crystal vanes and special coatings, and other new features that really made the engines extremely powerful and increasing to this fighter jet's manoeuvrability. For the plane as a whole, it was virtually important to stay within the weight limits, so that the Su-27's various systems had to be extensively re-engineered to incorporate the new components. For example, it was decided to meet the specifications for the control system and reduce the size and weight for its assemblies. This was to incorporate the plane's designs for the USSR's first mass-produced hydraulic systems, with the operating pressures increased up to 280 kg per square centimetre. This was a radical new type of steering linkage, with power and distribution centres separated into individual blocks. This, again, introduced better aerodynamics and better stability when flying at fast speeds. The Su-27's avionics suite was basically one of the most beautiful suites available for aircraft in the Russian period of the Cold War. This was developed and based on large-scale introduction of digital processing using onboard computers, and the principle of extensive integration of various systems by function. For example, the fire control system incorporated, in addition to a target search and track radar channel, or the multi-purpose onboard radar, an independent information channel, i.e. an optical search and tracking station. As part of a goal-orientated retrofitting program, the Su-27 received a specially developed new generation guided missile of medium variant, the K-27E, and also the short-range K-73. This jet was primarily designed for the Cold War to engage the F-15 Eagle, and rightly so, with its two very powerful engines and some really capable long-range anti-air missiles. However, one of the things that really set this aircraft aside with the F-15 was the avionics installed on it. The radar is a Phasotron N001 Mayak pulse Doppler radar with a track-while-scan system. It also had the look-down, shoot-down capability, complemented by an OLS-27 infrared search and track at the nose, with a range of around about 80 to 100 kilometers. The main armament of this fighter jet is the 30mm GSH-3101 located at the starboard wing root, and up to 10 hardpoints with the capability of carrying up to 6,000 kilograms or 13,227 pounds of 6 medium-range R-27 AA-10 Alamo in NATO code missiles, and 2 to 4 short-range heat-seeking R-73 AA-11 missiles or Archer in NATO code. The armament deployed were pretty much varying between version to version, and this is one of the most standard configurations for air-to-air capabilities. The Su-27 has proven to be a very good platform for further development also. One of the first versions that followed is the Su-30 family, known as the Flanker C by NATO, and based on the Su-27UB training version. This version was enhanced with its range, thrust vectoring, which in turn enhances its maneuverability even more, while having the same power plant of the basic model. The avionics are also well enhanced, having an autopilot for all flight stages and low altitude flight in terrain following radar mode. There was individual group combat capabilities against air-to-ground and sea surface targets. The automatic control systems interconnected with the navigation systems, communicating with one another and making a really good package for a fighter jet. This allowed for automatic mode of route flights, target approaches, recovery to airfield and landing approaches. The version that follows on from that is the Su-33, which is the naval version of the Su-27 and is often denominated as the Su-27K or Flanker D, operated by the Russian Navy from the sole carrier it has. The next version is the Su-32 or 34, which is basically a strike fighter bomber purposed at replacing the Su-24. Equally based on the Su-27 airframe, its mission is to deal with, at tactical level, ground and naval targets. More specifically, tactical bombing, attack, reconnaissance and/or interdiction. This can operate alone and in groups, under any weather conditions, under any environment saturated with anti-air defences and electronic countermeasures. It features canards, a new nose and a side-by-side seating allowing 2 pilots, new power plants, the Saturn Lockheed AL-31F FM turbofans, and a range of 4,000 kilometers. The version that followed is the Su-35 Flanker E, an all-weather air superiority and super maneuverable multi-role fighter, featuring a structure composed of high-strength composites and aluminum lithium alloys, increasing its fuel volume while reducing its overall weight. The tail fins were larger, having carbon fiber reinforced polymer, square top tips, and the cannons were removed while the power plant was new. Again, 2 Saturn Lockheed AL-31 FM turbofan engines, which were larger with a lot more thrust. This version also had a very powerful avionics system, such as the fire control system and the N011 pulse Doppler radar that allows the fighter to track up to 15 airborne targets and guide 6 missiles at the same time. The rear radar, a Phasotron N012, also complements the fire control system. The LCD screens are also a feature while the seat is inclined at a 30-degree angle to allow the pilot to tolerate more G-forces. It also had the ability to carry a whole new array of weapons like napalm, dumb bombs or freefall iron bombs and cluster munitions, a lot more air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles with a payload increase of 2 new underwing pylons being installed. It does have air-to-air refueling capabilities, increasing its operational range from 4,000 kilometers or 2,222 miles, and only 58 units are in service currently with the Russian Air Force. The next version is the Su-37 Flanker F, otherwise known as the Terminator. It is the most recent version, based on the Su-35 being a single-seat, super maneuverable multi-jet fighter with upgrades such as its avionics suite, fire control systems and thrust vectoring nozzles. It also features its canards, which have surprisingly come back, an improved fire control system with an upgraded N001M BARS passive scanned radar tracking array, which can again track around 15 airborne targets and guiding 4 missiles at the same time. This is again given an N012 rearward facing radar, having also updated its electronic warfare support measures. The 12 hardpoints allowing air-to-air and air-to-surface missiles are still apparent. Moreover, the cockpit has 4 LCD multifunction displays now, providing more air data navigation, system statuses, weapon system selections and tactical situation information. Of course, being that it is Russia, the equipment never is going to stay in-house. Russia is not only the country that is producing the Sukhoi 27, as China were given the airframes and the designs, allowing them to produce and pretty much make their own fighters and technology and license to build them, and that has been developed all the way through its own versions of the Su-27, along with the Shaogang J-11 or the NATO Coders Flanker B+, which is based on the Su-27SK. This is in operation with the Chinese People's Liberation Army Air Force or PLAAF, and this version is fitted with the Chinese-made improvements to the airframe and avionics, such as radars and avionics suites, as well as weaponry such as the PL-12 medium-range active radar homing air-to-air missile and anti-ship missiles. The power plant was reported to be in principle as a Chinese Shenyang WS-10 Taihan based on the CFM-56. The Su-27 has seen a lot of action after 1985, the year in which it was introduced in the Soviet Air Force and after actually entering service in 1990. The first operation took place in 1987, when an Su-27 intercepted a Norwegian P-3 Orion maritime patrol aircraft over the Barents Sea, colliding with it after executing some rather close passes. Also, between the years of 1992 and 1993, a Russian Su-27 operated against the Georgian forces, with an Su-27 lost due to friendly fire as it was intercepting a Georgian Su-25 on a CAS mission. The Su-27s were used again over the skies of Georgia, this time during the 2008 South Ossetia War to gain air superiority over the scenario. It was rumoured that the Su-34 also took part during this conflict. The Su-34 was also used to bomb ice dams in Volgogla Oblast to prevent floods. In 2013, a couple of Su-27s were intercepted by 4 Japanese Mitsubishi F2s after entering briefly Japanese airspace and flying near Rishiri Island and the Sea of Japan before turning back. Funnily enough, this jet has always been in the news too in the Western world. Unfortunately, the Su-27 was very close to colliding with the United States Air Force Boeing RC-135 when trying to demonstrate, I guess, air superiority to this aircraft. It seems to be happening a lot more nowadays. You see these aircraft coming in way too close than they should be to certain aircraft, doing a bit of a scare tactic, and I can kind of see why they're doing it, but it's really just not the way to go. However, we do get to see some beautiful footage of these aircraft when they do it. I got to admit, when you see these aircraft up close and personal, reminds you the fact that the Russian Air Force really is not messing around, and they are very, very passionate about their airspace and to not go anywhere near it. And with aircraft like these flying around, I would not want to be venturing into that airspace. Honestly though, guys, I have a massive respect for this aircraft. I've got to admit, just like most Russian military equipment, it's very hard to keep track of what is what in terms of variations and models. What are you? Are you an Su-35? Are you a 27S, a 27K? Like, there's so many different variants. It's very tough to judge the actual specifications of each aircraft, so I'm not really going to put my finger on a particular model, but the airframe itself is just fantastic. We know of its true reliability when it comes to maneuverability and aerodynamics very, very well with the thrust vectoring and all the different avionics that this aircraft has. It clearly has put itself into the spotlight when it comes to being very, very good in the air. When it comes to, you know, the electronic warfare suite and the weapon suite, it's hard to say. You know, we're looking at an aircraft that is very old. It is old in terms of generations of aircraft. However, it is being upgraded to a more modern standard. Does its aircraft, anti-aircraft missiles, you know, stay up to that standard? It's hard to say. I would definitely say it's not something I would want to be flying against if I was in an F-16, F-15, F-22, whatever it may be. Air-to-air missiles are air-to-air missiles at the end of the day, and I do honestly feel that if you were up against one of these aircraft in the sky in a real combat situation, you would not be twiddling your thumbs having a cup of tea in the cockpit in the Western world. You would be probably crapping yourself. I know I would, because this aircraft really does have some severe capabilities. I have a lot of respect for it. It's definitely not one of my favorite Russian aircraft. I have a lot more favoritism for the MiG-29, basically because I love the movie GoldenEye, and the MiG-29s are the fighter jets that come save the day when, well, they were supposed to save the day, but the EMP took them out. Anyway, another story. But I much, you know, prefer the MiG-29 over the Su-27 and 35 family. That's just how I am, and, you know, it's just my own personal opinion. That's no disrespect to the aircraft and its capabilities. It's just, you know, personal preference. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I'd love to hear your comments and opinions on this aircraft, and if there's anything I've said or incorrectly stated, please feel free to correct me. I do apologise. I try my best to look for as much information and sources as I can to kind of cross-reference and put some information in there that's as applicable to the aircraft or vehicle or whatever else is that I'm reviewing at the time. And if I do make a mistake, call me out for it. I do apologise. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a like. All the generic YouTubers that tell you all the things, I'm going to say the same thing. Like and subscribe and do all this good stuff. One thing I will really ask for, though, if you do want to support my channel, is to go check out my Patreon page. Yes, you can go check that out in the link box below. It is in the description. Go check out the link, and if you want to support me, feel free to check out my Patreon page. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks again for watching, and bye-bye.